Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, Victorville Water District, and the City Council performing the housing functions of the former Victorville Redevelopment Agency. First item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the council at this time? All right, seeing no one, we'll have our declaration of closed session by our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor McEachran. We have two closed session items tonight. They are both existing litigation pursuant to subdivision A of section 54956.9 of the Government Code. It is City of Victorville versus First Assembly of God, and it is City of Victorville versus Hamid Roknian et al. The case numbers are set forth on the agenda. To the extent we take action on those items that's reportable, we will report that either at the conclusion of the closed session or immediately preceding the 7 o'clock meeting.
All right, we will now move into closed session. Good evening. I'd like to call back to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City Council performing the housing functions of the former Victorville Redevelopment Agency. I lost my sheet, so I know we have an invocation that's going to be led by Captain Sylvan Young from the Salvation Army, and our Pledge of Allegiance by our Police Chief, Captain Don Yoder. If you'd all please rise.
I ask you to bow your heads with me. Dear God, we come before you this evening. Lord, we are thankful for the freedoms we have in the country that we live in. One of those freedoms is being involved with the governmental process. Lord, we ask that you bless our conversations and our thoughts this evening. Be with us in our actions and all that we say and do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we have a special presentation this evening, and it's my honor to present this banner that we have hanging here for Bradley Keith Peterson, who's off on duty over in Afghanistan. And here to accept this certificate is Bradley's father, Keith Peterson, stepmom, Monica Peterson, who works here at the City of Victorville, and his business associate, Ben Lamson, who sponsors the banner. So, Ben, if you could come up. And all the Blue Star folks. And Keith, I believe you want to say a few words, and even Ben might want to say a few words, so I don't know who wants to go first.
All right. Well, my name's Keith Peterson. I recently retired after 33 proud years of serving with the Victorville Fire Department and 2 with County Fire. It only seems like yesterday that my son, Bradley, was climbing around on the fire engines and racing through the fire station. Today, he's in the Army's 45th Sustainment Brigade, 376 HR Company, serving in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Now I know the emotion, the concern, the pride of having a loved one serve in a combat zone. I'd like to thank the council for the banner program. I'd like to thank my wife, Monica Peterson, for developing this program. I know it means a lot to a lot of families who have loved ones serving in the military. And I'd also like to thank Ben Lamson and Bob Wilson, Ricky Eddings, and the members of Blue Star Properties for sponsoring Bradley's military banner. It means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
My name is Ben Lamson. I'm from Blue Star Properties. It's exciting to be here tonight and to be able to sponsor this banner. Brad is a very amazing young man, and I think all of us in the community should be proud of him. Not just being raised here in the local community, but going to school here. He started working with our company as a teenager 12 years ago. And he grew in our business doing well, decided to join the military and start a career in the military, which was wonderful for him. Got his education and training there, came back to Victorville, got his real estate broker's license, went out and started doing real estate sales and construction in the Victor Valley over the last 6, 7, 8 years, working on and off with us as well. And he's always stayed involved with the guards. He's now overseas again, and he's just an absolute role model for all of us. You know, he's a kid that everybody wants to have as a kid. And his father is wonderful. We've known him for now 12, 13 years as well. But I think the program the city has here, recognizing these young men that go overseas, that risk their lives for our freedom so we can wake up and do what we want, we can go to bed at night and feel safe, is quite a wonderful thing for all of us here. So we're very happy to sponsor the banner. I'm very proud of your son, and we hope that Brad comes home safe to all of us here in Victorville. Thank you.
All right, so this will come down and be hanging on our light standards until he comes back. So we'll have our thoughts and wishes with you and your family as he does his duty over there. Thank you. Let's all give him a round of applause. All right, I would like to ask our city attorney if we have any announcements out of closed session.
Thank you, Mayor McEachran. We had two closed session items, both existing litigation pursuant to subdivision A of section 54956.9 of the Government Code. The parties and the case numbers are set forth on the agenda, but there is no reportable action with respect to either item.
All right, at this time, I'll have our city clerk present the agenda to the council.
The City Council of the City of Victorville welcomes the public's participation in tonight's meeting. It is requested that all present please silence cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices, and that personal conversations be kept to a minimum during the conduct of the meeting. Persons who wish to address the council on a specific item which appears on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards that have been placed on the agenda table in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk for the record prior to consideration of the item. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card when the item comes up for discussion by the city council. The public comment period is the time and place for the general public to address the city council on any item within their jurisdiction that is not on the agenda. It is requested that a speaker card also be submitted to the city clerk for anyone who wishes to address the city council during the public comment period. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less as deemed necessary by the mayor, depending upon the number of individuals desiring to speak. All communications are to be addressed directly to the city council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Individuals who fail to adhere to these guidelines may be asked to yield the floor. Any individual or group who engages in disruptive conduct during the meeting will be removed from the chambers by order of the mayor. Disruptive conduct includes, but is not limited to, addressing the council without being recognized, not addressing the subject before the council, repetitiously addressing the same subject, failing to relinquish the podium when requested to do so, verbal outbursts or comments from the audience. Thank you for your cooperation and adherence to these rules. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the council. There are 2 revisions for tonight's agenda. On hearing item number 8, the city attorney has requested that the item be opened, testimony taken, and that the item be continued to the September 4th meeting. And staff is requesting that written communications item number 12 be removed from the agenda at this time. Those are all the revisions I have, Mayor McEachran.
All right, thank you. We'll now move into public comment, and I do have several cards. I'll start with Al Cotillo. Al?
So if I don't pay attention, I really can't hear good. Anyway, the biggest reason I came here is because Angel Bellier mentioned something about taxing people who live on the golf course. The people who live on that golf course been there for 35 years, and they've been supporting the city for 35 years. Tax the new people that are moving in, not us. Also, there's only one person on the whole 14th green who plays golf. None of the people play golf that live there. It's mostly people from out of town. And they pay $35 for a golf cart and an 18-hole golf course. That's almost free. And if you belong to some special club, it's $19. But I've seen more people on that golf course recently than I have ever seen. So evidently that's working. But you got to put the price up after a while. You can't go on with that. But please don't get into the thing of taxing us on the golf course. I don't even like living on the golf course. I'd like to get the hell out of there, but I can't sell my house because I got to give it away. It was worth $200,000 once. The lots were worth $120,000. Now the mobile home and the lot, I'm lucky if I can get $30,000. And you want to tax us? I agree with almost every single thing you say, but that, no. Also, on the golf course, there are several holes that are filled with water 24 hours a day, and I'm telling you, the last time it happened, I went out there and filled the holes myself because they wouldn't do it. You're going to have mosquitoes out here one of these days. Mosquitoes will breed in them things. There's mosquitoes in Spring Valley Lake. There's mosquitoes at the end of 7th Street where all the homeless people are. There's no reason why there's not going to be mosquitoes on the golf course. And then you'll see how many people come and play on the golf course when they're getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. Also, the budget. You guys say you have a balanced budget. How can you have a balanced budget when the roads need fixing? You can't even see the lines on half the streets up here. There's bumps everywhere. The animal control don't have any money. We don't have enough sheriffs. You know, when all that is paid for and you got enough sheriffs and all that is done and the city is running right, then you got a balanced budget. When you get money in the general fund and you can do everything you want to do, then you got a balanced budget. Right now, you don't have a balanced budget because nothing is fixed. And we paid more money to have the calcium taken out of our water for the water department, which all that money went to the airport anyway. And I still got just as much calcium in my water as I had before. So I don't know why we paid extra money for water. That's about it. Mike Rothschild, I'm absolutely stunned that you're running again. There were 3 people that ran this city council for years, and you were one of them. And that's why this city is in so much trouble. In my opinion, everything I say up here is in my opinion. And I almost fell out of my car when I saw your sign up. I can't believe you're running for office again. And if the people elect you, they deserve what they get.
Raymond Ontiveros.
Mayor, members of the council. My name is Ray Ontiveros. I'm a resident of Victorville. I've been here for quite so many years. And I believe exactly as I stand here before you and read that sign, in God we trust. And I trust in His Son, Jesus Christ. 2,000 years ago, He said something in Matthew 7, section 15. A tree and its fruits. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep clothing, but inwardly are raving wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered in thorns, or figs from thistles? So every sound tree bears good fruit, but every bad tree bears evil fruit. A sound tree cannot bear evil fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will know them by their fruits. And this was the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who said this. And I would like to say that the people of Victorville and in the valley, they were very sincere when they met with the Planning Commission and very sincere when they met with you people. But 2 of you people wanted to give us a chance to allow us to hear our side of the story. And I thank you very much. But it didn't turn out that way. So I'm just saying, the people opened their hearts to you. They told you they ate this bad fruit that would be going into the heart of the city of Victorville. This tree will be planted there. And all we can do is pray that God will intervene. And I thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you. Frank Atkins.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Frank Atkins. I reside in the city of Victorville, and I'm a candidate on the ballot for Victorville City Council in November. This past week, there were a couple of articles in the daily press that caught my attention. One had to do with Victorville's failed power venture, VV2, which I believe is on tonight's agenda, number 18. There was a lot of stuff online about it. We'll see how that vote goes. The other article, entitled November Races Firm Up, starts off by saying, in wake of a highly critical grand jury report into city practices, Victorville City Council is the most hotly contested local race on the November ballot, with 14 candidates competing for 3 seats. My hope is that we get some people up there that have a heart for the people. It really appears it does not matter what the people of Victorville want or need. You guys are going to do your own thing together. Thank God an election is coming up and a chance to change things for the better in our city. Thank you.
Chuck and Pat Hansen?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Chuck Hansen, and this is my lovely wife, Pat Hansen. I'll let her do most of the talking, but we're here to let you know that we're going to have our 5th annual Tour de Apple Valley bike ride. And it's going to be a fun ride, so we'd like to see all of you here. You rode with me once, Mike, but I'd like to see you out there again. And tell Rudy we come up with a 10-mile ride, especially for him.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, members on the dais. My name is Pat Hansen. We are from Apple Valley. This is our 5th annual Chuck Hansen Tour to Apple Valley. You recognize the name. It's going to be held on Saturday, October 22nd. We have initiated our own nonprofit organization so that we don't have to be relying on the Park and Recreation Department, which, as we all know, all our government entities are looking for funds. And so we're going to start looking for our own funds in this particular instance. We have a website. It's very simple. It's called tourtoapplevalley.org. And for those of you who can't spell, TDAV.org. We are accepting registrations online. And then on the day of the ride, registrations will also be accepted. However, there's a penalty for late entry. So if you intend to ride, you're better off getting your registration online. Our registrations are starting a little bit later this year because we noticed last year, even though we're talking about the heat now, by the 20th of October, it's going to be pretty cool. So we're going to start at 8 o'clock rather than 6 o'clock a.m. We're offering 3 rides, a 50-mile, a 25-mile, and as Chuck said, this year we are initiating a 10-mile family ride, which means that if the mother and father pay the fee, the children can ride free. This ride will take them right past our new animal shelter. So we're going to have, in conjunction with the ride, one of the animal shelter events will be happening at the same time. We're initiating a situation where we're soliciting sponsors, and any charitable organization that wants to work with us, we will work with them and share our funds. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing all of you on October 20.
Thank you.
May we have your permission to display our flyers somewhere in your facility?
Yes.
Give them to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom LaFortune?
Well, back again, it's about election time. There's going to be an interesting election when hopefully, with any kind of luck, a lot of prayers and everything else, most of the people that's sitting up there now won't be sitting there anymore. Because from what you've done to this city, lies, alibis, and everything else for all these years, you don't belong to be sitting up there. You know, it's what you people have done to this city. You made a statement in the paper not too long ago. We have a good council in place. We're on the right track. How can you say that? You got 3 of the same ones you still had. How can you say that? You lies and alibis constantly. You people just never give up. It was one thing, but when the elections are over with, they're going to get some decent people up there and replace your high-priced lawyer.
Please address your comments to the council and not to staff.
I just said it.
I said address your comments to council and not to staff.
My neck. You know, like you have. A click in your neck. But with any kind of luck, none of you will be sitting there, including your buddy over here, the high-priced lawyer. Have a good one. Oh, by the way, they are looking for staff in Ludlow out on I-40. Put your names in.
Thank you. Dorothy Miller?
Hello, Mayor and Council people. People, I'm saying, you hear that? Anyway, the thing I have to talk about tonight is I feel that every single one of you and every single one of you people should all get on IE Politics. There is quite a little thing on there that you all need to see with somebody that is running for our San Bernardino County 1st District Supervisor. And if that isn't enough to make people sit down and think of what is really going on here, I don't know what will. Because what I seen on there, I would never in my life vote for somebody that has so low steam. And I won't say exactly what happened, but everybody needs to get on there. People are watching it on the little computer there, the thing. It's IE Politics. You need to get on there. You need to see what's going on, because we're going to get people in here that we don't need. Thank you.
Raymond Herrera?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. My name is Raymond Herrera, President and founder of We the People, California's Crusader. When I start off, Mayor, you have a problem with First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. And I'm going to be on the radio Friday, Talk Back with Chuck Wilder. It's going to be about you and this City Council. 20 minutes. The American people are not pleased with you, Mayor, with what you did the last time I was here. And you know what I'm talking about. You treat people like they're your kids. We're adults and we're constituents, and we have the right to speak out to you or any one of these staff members, whether you like it or not. To the residents and the constituents of Victorville, the day has come to vote this mayor out, Rothschild, Cabrales, and make sure that Cox doesn't get back in. This is the team that's awarded $90,000 to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. $90,000 to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Why? I do not know. I'm going to form Raymond's Chamber of Commerce and ask for $90,000 from you, Mayor. But it's corruption. It's a waste of tax dollars. Not only that, there's cover-ups going on. This city council, Cox included, spent $67 million trying to appease Dr. Pepper Bottling Company by building them their own water treatment plant. $67 million. Does it feel like we need this mayor and the city council leading us in the next few years? No. It's wasted money. And then they go about trying to cover up the tracks of Rudy Cabriales and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the water treatment plant out there by engaging in EB-5, loans to foreigners, $500,000, and they sell a part of America's just so they can cover up their corruption and their corrupt ways in the water treatment plant and all the wasted dollars that you've wasted. Nobody wants a city council like this. Nobody wants people like Cabriales influencing the rest of you. Rothschild, you voted to kill babies last time by not voting. Kennedy, Cabriales voted to butcher babies in the streets of Victorville. Mayor, you have a problem with Raymond Herrera. I'm going to see you voted out. I'm going to see Rothschild and the rest of you voted out. There's only one person that belongs up there, Angela Valles.
Robin Davidson?
My name's Robin Vidston. I'm also with We the People, and I also wanted to again address the corruption with the High Desert Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And in addition, I would just like to address the last city council meeting when Mr. Herrera, for his words, was dragged out from this podium by the police. You can watch this on video, and it looks like a scene out of Castro's Cuba or Iran, not the United States of America. And Mayor McElhorn had Mr. Herrera dragged out for his words as he sat elbow to elbow with Mayor Pro Tem Cabriales, who knowingly broke the law for over $50,000. And instead of being prosecuted by the district attorney, he has elected not to prosecute him. And I would just ask the public, if I or a fellow citizen did something in this city where $50,000 was basically stolen, do you think the district attorney would not prosecute us? No, we would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. To not prosecute this law-breaking sets a precedent where leaders in this city think they can break the law. So what we are here to say is the district attorney did not do the right thing, but the people do have a recourse. Another area where the city council partnered with the corrupt High Desert Chamber of Commerce was for the Cinco de Mayo festival. And the people's tax dollars were used for vehicles, signs, manpower, and even the High Desert Chamber of Commerce is allowed to store their equipment free of charge at city yards. Again, this is more corruption associated with the High Desert Chamber of Commerce. But what the people can do is they can vote out these corrupt incumbents, Mayor McElhorn, Rothschild, and stop this corrupt collusion with the High Desert Chamber of Commerce. And most of all, the American public needs to remember freedom of speech. This is why we have a constitution, to keep government officials like this mayor from squelching our words. Thank you.
Please. No. No applause. I'm not going to allow it anymore. And if you're going to say my last name, say it correctly. It's McCachran. Melinda O'Connor.
Hi, Council. My name is Melinda O'Connor from Victorville. And I wanted to bring up one thing when I spoke a couple weeks back. And I felt, Mayor McEachron, you were wrong in approaching me. And with what you said, I felt attacked. And from reading tonight's agenda, according to the law, you're not allowed to address me unless it's on the agenda, which you did. You called me back to the podium and did that. So I just want to bring that up. According to what's on your agenda, you did something against the law. One thing that I really am concerned about is I think we're really missing out on a library in Victorville, and I'm not really sure why the one closed and another one didn't open. But I'm concerned because a lot of the youth and our children that don't have computers in their home and they can't afford them, that they're going to have to go. Phelan has a new library, Hesperia does, and Apple Valley. So I want to know if at some time this can be brought up or we can talk about how we can get a library back in Victorville, because I think it's really important these kids have access to computers and books and things they really need that they have to drive a long ways to. Because I know when I go to the library now, I go clear to Hesperia for it. One of the other things I wanted to address was the article in the paper about John Roberts and what's going on there. And I want to know how many people from our city, whether it be council or people that work for the city, that went to Steamboat and vouched for John Roberts and said what a good guy he was. I don't know if that's normal practice, that people from the city go there to give him a recommendation. And I'm concerned about the VV2, so I'm going to be glad when that's agendized so we can hear more about it. I was concerned that I saw who the mayor was and who the council were and who our legal advisor was in 2005 when this was all put together. So I was just a little concerned about how somebody could get a $5 million a year sweetheart deal that goes on forever. Makes no sense.
Mr. Mayor, if I could respond to that just briefly, the library in Victorville is still open. I'm not sure, Melinda, if you want to talk with our Director of Community Services, Christian Guntert. I'm not aware of any change in hours or any closure at all. In fact, the city put in a much larger computer area so that we could have more access for the students in that area. It is tied into the county library system. You can check out books from other libraries. In fact, a lot of times our books are checked out by others within the county. It's not part of the county library system, but we are tied in with them so that we can share resources. Right. It's not a county library anymore. The city took over the county library in, I think it was 2007, if I recall correctly.
Lisa Hayes.
Hi there. My name is Lisa Hayes. I live in the high desert, and I'm not here to attack anybody or challenge your integrity. I'm here because last time I was here, you guys voted on an appeal that I had filed, and I'm not quite sure that you guys were able to assess all the information that was given to you. There was quite a bit of information that night, and a lot of it was complicated. And I'm here tonight to ask you, and I want to be clear, this is not about abortion. Rothschild, you don't have to run out. It's not about abortion. This is about following the rules. Everyone should follow the same set of rules. And I think if you look at the rules, they're clear. If you understand them, they're clear. And I just gave you a copy to make it simpler so you understand them, because they can get complicated. So I'm just asking if you can reconsider your vote on item number 11 from the last meeting. You can reconsider it to relook at it. Don't vote on it tonight. Vote on it after you look at all your information. You can vote on it to deny it. You can vote on it to uphold the appeal. You can vote on it to throw it back to the Planning Commission. Have them do their job the right way. That's what they get paid to do. So I'm just asking you to reconsider your vote from last week. Thank you.
Hakeem.
Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council, it's a pleasure to speak to you today. I just got to let you guys know you missed a really good, fun, two-hand touch game of football on my street a few minutes ago. I scored 2 touchdowns. So, but what I really wanted to talk to you today about is our crime again. I did a little bit of thinking, and I want to ask, is it possible for this question or this can be agendized or something? So you'll hear it, and then you tell me what you think. I wanted to know if Doug and his team and Captain Yoder could create like a spreadsheet of some kind to show what crimes were the crimes that were committed, and at what part or what zone of the city that the crimes were committed. Like these crimes were committed in Brentwood for this period of time, or a month, or a 6-month period, or a year period. I'm not sure. But the purpose of getting this data sheet or spreadsheet is to actually find where are the crimes where are the bulk of the crimes being committed, what are those crimes, and what is our plan for those crimes? What information can we learn from the data, and how are we using the data, and are we improving? So I don't know if that can be agendized, if that could be just something that could be created, but I'd be interested to know what crimes are being committed where, in hopes that it could start the conversation and start the process of building on our city crime plan. So with that, I thank you. And you did miss a good football game, too.
Akeem, I'll ask Captain Cliff Yoder to talk with you. Sorry, Don Yoder. I'm thinking of our prior chief. Because we have gone through this process before, and I know they have that type of information by sector in the city. So if you would talk with him, he can probably get you that information.
And he provides a monthly report on
Yes, and we get a monthly
types of crime, not locations, but we've had that discussion about locations last year. And that's a good thing to update if the captain would like to do that.
Thank you. All right, that's all the cards I have on our public comments, so we'll now move into the rest of our agenda. The Library Board of Trustees, there was no items at time of posting. Same with the Southern California Logistics Rail Authority. So moving on to the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority. Under written communications, we have agenda item number 6. This is a request to ratify the purchase of a replacement air traffic control tower voice communication system and award a contract in the amount of $76,694.84 to Harris Canada Systems, Inc.
Motion by Councilmember Rothschild, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 7, this is a request to reject all bids on the SCLA ramp rehabilitation Phase 1 project and re-advertise with additional quantities.
I have a question. When it says for additional quantities, are we, I don't really understand why the staff didn't know ahead of time that we'd have to, backtrack.
Mr. Metzler. Councilwoman Valles and members of the council, this item involves the rehabilitation of joints that actually are connecting panels that make up your ramp. The ramp is about 120 acres of concrete, so it's fairly extensive. And the amount of work, because the ramp is so old, is work that will last us several years. I would estimate anywhere from 3 to 5 years if we can keep on a diligent schedule. When we had originally bid this item, we bid it based upon the known quantities and the engineer's estimates that we figured we could bid without going over the grant amount that's provided by the FAA. The results of this bid opening showed us that the market is much more competitive than it once was, based upon the information that we got even from the private sector with respect to the cost to do this work. So this is actually the product, fortunately for us, in that the private sector is bidding with a much sharper pencil, which is allowing us effectively to get more work done. So the rejection of the bid is so that we can add scopes of work to get more done and allow for us to spend the entire grant amount, as opposed to subjecting ourselves to actually losing money if we don't spend the entire grant.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that we were going to get more out of it, and we weren't just, spending it just so we don't lose it. So as long as we're getting more work, I'm okay with that.
We're getting more work.
Motion by Councilmember Valles, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Okay, for the successor agency to the RDA, the Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City Council performing housing functions of the former RDA, there were no items at time of posting. So moving on to the City Council, we have agenda item number 8. This is a public hearing called to hear arguments for and against the acquisition of portions of certain real property as set forth in resolution number 12-047. I'm going to open the public hearing. We do have a request to continue this item. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor McEachran. I would request that we continue this item after the opening of the public hearing until the September 4th meeting.
All right, so I'll open the public hearing on agenda item number 8. Anyone wishing to address the City Council on that item? All right, seeing no one, we will continue this item to the September 4th meeting.
I believe that's
correct.
Next meeting, correct.
All right. So we'll move on now to our consent calendar. Agenda item number 9.
Motion by Councilmember Rothschild, second by Councilmember Kennedy.
I'd like to pull check number 710676 and check number 701607, the attorney's bills.
All right, those items will be
Amended.
pulled.
Accept the amendment.
Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
All right, now we'll vote on agenda item number 9A, specifically with respect to the check numbers.
I'd just like to make mention that the city attorney is billing a little over $105,000 for this week.
Approval. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent and Councilmember Vyas voting no.
Agenda item number 10 is request to award a contract to American Asphalt South for $84,989.35 to perform crack and slurry seal for Topaz Road, Hollyvale Avenue, and Vallejowood Drive.
I have a question. How do we decide which roads are going to get repaired and which aren't?
It partially has to do with an evaluation by the engineering department, public works departments. If you want anything more than that, I would invite our director of public works, Sean McGlade, to come up and fill in a few more details on that.
I get asked a lot by constituents, and they feel that the only way you could get your road fixed is if city council lives on or near, or somebody knows somebody. So how do we dispel that? I mean, is it by complaint that, you know, we get a number of complaints on this road, or are there accidents, or how is it decided?
Accidents wouldn't necessarily be a factor, but certainly the amount of complaints, staff observations, and obviously the amount of maintenance that has to go into certain areas. We are developing, though, a pavement management system which would assign a pavement condition rating to streets without the city, and that would develop the level of importance. It relates to traffic volumes and the condition of the pavement, and that will help us to arrive at basically a more empirical methodology of assessing which streets should be
So in this case, for these roads, how was it decided?
Actually, I'm not too sure of the history of that. That was before I became the Director of Public Works. It was a project that was in the works.
So would it be safe to say when I hear complaints or allegations like that, for me to tell the constituents that it's best for them just to call and complain? And
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 11 is a request to adopt resolution number 12-048 entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Victorville affirming the city's commitment to continuing to abide by the Brown Act, ensuring public transparency and public input."
If I might, Mayor McEachern, to add some color to this, what has happened as a result of the chaotic budget process in Sacramento, the governor signed a trailer bill, and it was a 700-page bill, and a portion of that bill actually suspended part of the requirements for compliance with the Brown Act. Those are pretty important requirements. They deal with the posting of the agenda, the posting of and the reportable items dealing with closed session items, the requirements to report out on closed session actions, the requirements of making documents available at the conclusion of closed sessions. Our recommendation would be that, notwithstanding that these items are in suspension, that the council adopt this resolution to basically agree to continue to abide by the provisions of the Brown Act. It's in suspension for 3 years. but we believe in the order to keep transparency, it'd be appropriate to abide by them. In addition, related to this item, I provided each of you, and there are available extra copies, essentially a user's guide to the Brown Act to serve as guidance in terms of any questions you may have. The council has regularly abided and continues to abide by all of the provisions, and you're all pretty familiar with it. But this is a relatively straightforward synopsis of the requirements of the Brown Act. It talks about the history, that it was adopted in 1953, that it was adopted in order to provide for open, transparent meetings, with, of course, the exception of the itemized closed session items. It gives you discussions of what constitutes a public meeting, and essentially gives you the test, which is that when you're trying to get to a concurrence of a majority of this council, even outside of these chambers, it could be deemed to constitute a meeting. So I would advise all of you and recommend that you all briefly read through it. I think it's very simply read. It's straightforward. It talks about the ramifications of not abiding by the Brown Act, and it also goes into a pretty lengthy discussion of the various items related to closed sessions. These are exceptions to the Brown Act. They deal with such things as litigation, as you know, real property negotiations, personnel matters, things of that nature that the Brown Act specifically allows to be discussed in a confidential manner. And it talks about the requirements, because those become very technical as to when and why and what can be discussed in those. So I think this will hopefully be very helpful for the council. You're all already aware of all of these requirements, but it's a good refresher. And again, I would recommend that you adopt the resolution before you to continue to abide by the Brown Act, even though it is suspended.
I just have a question for staff. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this right off the top of your head. My understanding is the legislature suspended the Brown Act in California, but the reason they did that was because they didn't want to reimburse local governments for the cost of complying with the Brown Act.
Yeah, essentially they suspended only certain provisions of it, but they were the provisions that would typically require a city to expend funds to comply, such as the posting of the agenda. As a practical matter, I don't know how much the city's ever been reimbursed by the state for compliance.
That's my question. Do we know what the financial burden now is going to be on the city when we don't get reimbursed by the state?
I would say it's minuscule. There's not much there. I don't know that we have, I don't recall in recent history us actually submitting a bill to the state, because the amount of money that it would cost to work that up and to try to go after it is just not worth it. There's very little cost to these items, but there is some cost, and that's why they technically fell into the mandate category that the state suspended.
At VVWA, we did a cost analysis, and we get reimbursed about $2,500 a year.
And we don't even ask for anything here.
You know, I'm not sure that we do. I see Adele Mosier, the CFO, out in the audience, and she's shaking her head no. So I think probably a long time ago, the cost reimbursement just wasn't worth the effort to go after it.
Thank you.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 12 has been pulled.
That one's requested to be removed from the agenda.
Agenda item number 13 is request to approve the mutual release and settlement agreement by and between the City of Victorville and Alexander Zappala, settling the matter of the United States and the State of California et al. Ex Real Zappala versus Sully Miller Contracting Company et al. Case number SACV 08-988, as between the City of Victorville and Mr. Zappala.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 14 is request to approve the First Amendment and restatement of option and land lease agreement dated January 6, 2010 between the City of Victorville and Metro PCS Networks California LLC, amending an existing cell tower sublease in Mojave Vista Park.
The way this agenda item reads, under fiscal impact, it says $18,000 in rent annually for the Mojave Vista Park cell tower lease. This is revenue to us, though, right?
That's correct. That's the amount that the leasee would pay the city.
Motion by Councilmember Vyas, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 15 is request to ratify the memorandum of understanding between the City of Victorville and the Victor Valley Union High School District for the period of July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013, and authorize the city manager or his designee to process all documents required for the agreements.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Just for information, that's the one where school districts are paying 75% for the police officer and the city pays 25%. Different break on the car, but that's basically our partnership with the schools. We've done that over the years.
Agenda item number 16 is request to approve the conflict of interest code for successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency as set forth in resolution number 12-049.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
Agenda item number 17, this is a request to agendize for discussion and possible action Senator Dianne Feinstein's California Desert Protection Act. This was at my request. This is just to agendize the item. It would actually come back before the council at a future meeting.
I have a comment before I vote on this. I don't have a problem with agendizing it again, but it is a rather big item. It's not a small thing, especially for a community out here in the desert like Victorville to take a position on it. We've had some issues with it on the past, but one of the inputs that I would like to have is from all the industries out there that are dealing with the minerals out there, whether it's the cement plants or any of the other businesses out there that have those kind of resources. Obviously, the parks and recreational aspects of that, most folks will be there for sure, but I would like to know we have a lot of natural resources out here, and I would want some input back in them before I would even want to begin to discuss a position on this bill. And it may have morphed into something different than what we looked at a few years ago.
Well, and I agree. This is more or less to get the discussion going, but I think it's going to take some time for staff to provide us with the language of the bill, provide us with those who support the bill, or are opposed to the bill, and then also provide us with information as to those entities that have not yet chimed in, one being the Department of Defense. That's one of those agencies that I've been waiting to hear from as far as what their feelings are on this bill. Although they haven't opposed it, they haven't supported it, they're kind of neutral. So I think that that'll be some of the information that should be provided to the council in preparation for us discussing this.
Is there any reason it wasn't under item 20?
Well, I actually, based upon how staff did this, I actually requested that we consider discussing this, so it had to come back before us before we could actually have it come to us. So
It was brought up under item 20 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Actually, and this is putting it on the actual agenda.
I have a question. If staff prepares the language of the bill and all, I mean, I want to make sure that we don't get a slant one way or the other. So are we going to have like different parties that are for it and opposing it so that we can hear both sides of it? Because if you ask staff to put it together, you know, maybe they're for it or against it, and they're going to put that slant on the council.
I'm completely in favor of having both sides of
So we
of
would
the
have to
issue.
ask somebody else to come forward. and maybe groups, you know, obviously there's going to be dirt bike rider groups, different, you know, and then the environmentalists are going to come out. I mean, it's at a city council level, I mean, do we really have that much influence? I don't know if we do or not. Is this something you want to get into? Because just asking staff to provide us the language, I'm not comfortable with.
Well, I would expect that interested parties would weigh in with the city of Victorville.
How would we get that out to them, though?
Well, I would imagine that they are going to be well aware. They have been well aware in the past when we've considered this bill. They have showed up at the council meetings.
Okay.
We have never taken an action on this bill to date, but it has been before this council in the past, and we chose not to take any action at that time. But Senator Feinstein's staff has been in front of at least myself and members of staff asking us to at least consider it. The most I could do was say, we'll at least get it on the agenda for discussion and consider it. So,
Are we asking staff to interpret the bill for us and give us
no,
their opinion?
I don't really
No.
want any interpretation from staff or even a recommendation. I think that becomes our issue at the council level. All that I've asked staff to do is provide us with the bill language and any ancillary material that they may have been provided, whether it come from Senator Feinstein's staff or any other source from that matter.
But I would also like to hear from staff what their opinion is of the bill and how it would affect the city.
Well, and I'm sure that they'll provide that, but in the past, I think staff has pretty much been neutral because it has virtually little effect on the city of Victorville.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, it's been on the agenda twice, and for the most part, I think Senator Feinstein's staff have spoken to the item. There have been cards submitted in opposition or comment cards that we can research and make sure that at least those individuals are contacted. Certainly staff can take a look at it and try to determine any impacts that there might be for the city, but those are fairly ancillary to the rest of the bill, obviously. Keith, do you have anything more to add?
No, maybe just kind of how this has evolved and brought back. We've had discussions with Senator Feinstein's staff, as we do for a number of reasons. This is an item that has come up. It's been recently asked by Feinstein's staff if we would actually reconsider taking a position as they feel the bill has changed. Staff doesn't have a position on the bill, and only will we provide you with a position to the extent we feel that it has an impact, positive or negative, on the city. I think our greatest concern would be as if there would be a negative impact to the city, and if we can identify that, we'll certainly disclose that to you. Absent that, all we're going to be doing is sharing with you the information, maybe the highlights. We certainly can talk to some of our counterparts at some of the mining industries, those that represent those industries. We'll research a little bit into some of the off-highway vehicle groups that you'd expressed interest in. What we've been told from Feinstein's staff is the way the bill has been redrafted. It actually takes a lot of those special interests, their concerns at heart, and actually tries to address them in this new bill. I don't know what that means, but I think that's part of the exercise we'll go through.
That group would be the AMA, American Motorcycle Association, but also maybe McCachran could get, you're on the CRC, right? Are you still on there? The Central Republican Committee? Or not?
Well, we're asking to agendize the discussion, not have it.
Yeah, and I want to be careful here because I know someone indicated they want to speak. That we're not having this discussion here tonight as to whether or not we support or are against this bill. What we are having the discussion on is just to agendize it. So this discussion will be had at another day. So I would ask that the council would consider that motion at this time.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor McEachran. Councilmember Rothschild, may I get a vote?
No, I'm sorry.
Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis absent.
All right, agenda item number 18 is request direction to pursue an RFP response to the LADWP and direction to draft and execute definitive agreements between the city and PANDA and between the city and inland, releasing the city from the services agreement. Mr. Robertson?
Yeah, this item came to our attention probably about 30 days ago as an opportunity potentially to offload the Victorville 2 power plant development rights. Effectively, LADWP, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, has issued a request for projects for a power plant sized between 300 megawatts and 575 megawatts. The way the RFP reads, the reader would tend to believe that it's intended to be trying to purchase a power plant that maybe is an existing plant going through some kind of a repowering to more current technology. After reviewing the RFP with the consultants that are on contract and with Inland Energy, I asked Inland Energy staff to attend the briefing from LADWP, and upon returning from that, they indicated that there actually was a potential for us to sell or to bid into this, the Victorville 2 power project. It is an extremely short time frame for an RFP, but we believe we can get there. What you have on your agenda tonight is the terms of an MOU that is under development now. These terms are based largely on previous closed session discussions regarding other potential purchasers of that project. So the terms might look somewhat familiar to the council, at least. These types of terms I don't believe have ever come to a point that it was a public item, because we never got this far with any previous proposers to take on the project. The main reason for that is that previously there was not an actual request for projects. It was someone speculating, a power company, power plant company speculating that at some point in the future there would be a need for this power plant to feed into the California grid. And those other companies that have been listed on closed session agendas fairly regularly for the last 3 years have had an interest in acquiring the rights to the project. Ultimately, we've not been able to come to any kind of financial terms. The reason why this is different is that, first off, based on those discussions in closed session, I know what this council has been looking for as far as the financials of this deal, and I was confident in letting Panda know what I believe that the council would be interested in terms of this financial deal, not based on any promises to them, not based on anything other than the past history of the last 3 years and what the economics look like. So effectively, if this is approved tonight, we would probably sign this, I would imagine, tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, and ultimately that starts a 30-day clock in order to finalize those definitive agreements. In about the middle of that clock, Panda would need to actually submit the proposal to LADWP, and that's why it's before you tonight, is to give me the authorization to approve that proposal. If ultimately the council doesn't like the definitive documents, we can give notice to Panda and within 10 days cancel the whole deal. So this is a bit of a leap of faith. Ultimately, if approved and we get to definitive documents, Panda would pay the city $100,000 non-refundable. And then as they progress through the project, there would be two other small payments, followed by, when LADWP acquired the project, a large payment of $25 million. Between the $25 million and the $300,000 in progress payments, it puts us within a few $100,000 of the remaining costs for the development of the project that the city has expended to date. I know there's been a question about the $50 million that was spent on the GE contract. That money is long gone. It was written off in 2011, and we would not expect any potential purchaser of the project to repay the city for lost dollars for equipment that is no longer available. So if there's any questions about that, that's the basic answer to that. Effectively, this is a no-cost item for the city. Panda, upon signing the definitive documents, would take over all of the development responsibilities, including maintenance of the permits as they are proposing to LADWP. There is some relatively minor costs with maintaining the permits with the CEC, maintaining the PSD permit, and the other permits that are associated. So all of those costs would actually be borne by Panda, and ultimately the city would transfer its ability to develop the plant to Panda during the time frame that they were bidding with LADWP. If at any time they're knocked out of the process by LADWP, the agreement terminates, and there's no refunding of any dollars at all that have been paid to the city. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
And just a couple of comments. Number one, this project is number one in line in the state of California for building a new power plant. California is moving rapidly into a problem, self-inflicted wounds mostly. Some of you may have read in the newspapers that they don't even want electrons from a power plant in another state that is produced by coal or oil. So these kind of rules are so stupid and asinine for the state, but they're doing it. And having said that, it benefits this project because it keeps teeing this project up more and more valuable. Yesterday in the LA Times, they had an article that now it's looking like they're thinking about closing down the nuclear power plant. That's 4 of our plants up here, that nuclear power plant down in San Onofre. So again, they're squeezing themselves more and more. This is a good moment. I think this project is hot. I think it will move along. It looks, there's some good players in here. Certainly Panda is a billion-dollar corporation. So their offer to begin this process is like the city manager said, there's no risk to the city. There is another component of this that is very valuable to all of us locally. This is a $1.2 billion, if they keep the same design features, this is a $1.2 billion plant. That's property, irrespective of the RDA going away, that's property tax that comes back into the local community and the school districts. So as if it were a $1 billion building being put up out there, this is a $1 billion power plant whose property tax in the normal course of things will roll back in here as well. So again, that is a major plus. So the moment seems to be right for us to move ahead with this, and I would hope that the city would see clear. I'm certainly supporting of this initial approach, and as we go along, it will get stronger and stronger because each step is a $100,000 contribution from Panda into the cities without any refund opportunities into the process. So we waited a few years for this, but here it is, and I'm excited about that.
It must be clear because there's been some misinformation in the daily press. The city is not going to spend $1 billion on this plant. That is not our project. We're going to sell the property and the permits for $25 million, recover our investment, and be done with it. It'll be built by Panda.
It'll be built by Panda and then
acquired
transferred
by
to LADWP.
It'll
Yes.
be owned by LADWP. It will not be a city project. We're going to recover our permit costs and our initial development costs.
And land.
And the cost of the land.
Doug, can you discuss the track record in construction, specialized power plants, in Panda's track record for that, especially solar and renewable energy plants?
Sure. Actually, Panda is one of the few companies that recently completed 2 plants. One of them was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago in Texas, and then another one, I don't know if it was commissioned last week or not. I know that it was scheduled to be. Actually, for that project, it was very similar to our project in that it was a plant that had permits but didn't have an offtake agreement, and so it was sitting, much like ours is sitting as a development opportunity. Ultimately, they were able to find a fund that would provide the monies to build the plant, and they now have a successful plant up and operating. And there's a second one that I did not have a chance to get any confirmation on whether or not they finalized it, but I know that they were working on finalizing it. The solar piece of this actually is not something that is part of the LADWP bid, not something that LADWP has indicated that they are interested in as part of their bid. So the intent for this proposal would be to propose it as a natural gas-fired plant, almost identical to the one that they just completed, the 2 that they just completed in Texas, and to include the solar piece as an option. It may be something that upon seeing our RFP response that the LADWP thinks is a good idea. If not, then actually we would retain the majority of the land, and we would transfer only the land that was needed for the gas-fired power plant. Then we would have additional land out there that we could put our own solar development on or put any other type of development. But as far as Panda's experience with these types of plants, they are well experienced, including a situation that is identical to what we're facing right now.
Okay. And so how many years' experience do they have?
I don't know how many years' experience they have. I know that they've been around for quite a while.
Okay. And then the two examples that you gave me, were they the build-to-sell plant to a public utility?
I don't have that level of detail on it.
Okay. And what would be the estimated cost to build the plant?
I don't have that level of detail either, actually. That's something that they're working on now, and that'll be part of the bid into the LEDWP.
Okay. And then, so who pays for the cost to complete the solar portion of it?
It depends. If DWP ultimately picks up that option, and again, that's several steps ahead of where we are now. That's assuming that ultimately we are picked as the bidder, and ultimately they decide that they want that option. If LEDWP picks up that option, then it would be likely part of that build-own-transfer concept. And eventually, LEDWP pays for the entire thing. But in the interim, Panda would foot the bill for all the development of the entire plant during the building phase.
Okay. Can you define the role of Inland Energy in the entire process?
At this point, Inland Energy has been our consultants under the contract that was signed back in 2005. Their role has been to obtain the permits for the plant and get it to effectively a shovel-ready project that it is now. Ongoing, as part of, should the council approve this, ultimately Inland's role with the city would be eliminated. They would provide a release from the city from that 2005 contract, and they would sign a separate agreement that the city would not be a party to with Panda for whatever services Panda needs from Inland Energy. The city, back in 2005 when they signed that services agreement, had no one on staff that had the level of expertise in order to pursue those permits, and that was Inland's role. Panda, on the other hand, does have experts in that field, so they may or may not need as much of Inland services. I don't know. That is purposely written in as a separation from the city, and that the city is not a party to that contract. It's not something the city needs to be involved in. The attempt on my part, and I think on the council's part, based on previous direction, is we want to allow someone else to build this project.
How much do we pay Inland Energy for consultant fees?
Right now?
Right.
Right now, we don't pay anything, actually. We haven't paid Inland Energy since July of 2009. Back then, Mr. Cox actually effectively canceled their contract. However, it does have a clawback provision that if the plant is sold or the major equipment from the plant or the development rights to the plant are sold, we actually have to transfer that contract to the new owner. The reason why I say that the contract was canceled was because there's an annual appropriation requirement as part of that contract, and effectively we have not budgeted any dollars for that contract in the last 3 years, 3+ years now. They have maintained some records of billings during that time, and they have on occasion asked us to either pay some of the bill or, as we were getting close with other developers, actually any proceeds that we received up front, they wanted some payment for those bills. Inland and I have had some, I'll say, heated email exchanges over that issue, but ultimately they are working at risk and have been so for 3 years now. My suggestion to Inland and Panda was that I don't have the capacity to look back at the last 3 years and determine the value of the work that they performed. Panda does have that, so that is something that I recommended that they include in their agreement between the two of them and quite frankly, leave the city out of it.
Okay. So right now, Inland Energy is performing these services without any compensation.
There is an assumption that if at some point the city were to, not that we're going to build the facility, but if the city were to transfer the facility, they could make the request once there's an actual offtake agreement, once there's an actual payment for the full plant, they can make a request at that time of either the city or of whomever buys the plant. But those services have been performed, and at some point, someone will have to determine what the appropriate value of those services are.
So Inland Energy is saying that they're going to walk away from the city, and they're not going to hold us to that 5%. Is that correct? If the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power pursues this contract?
Ultimately, yes. That's what would occur. In fact, within 30 days of the signing of this MOU, that is one of the definitive documents as defined by this term sheet, that we would receive that release from the contract. Now, it would be unreasonable for anybody to release themselves from a contract without having, a clawback provision in the event that LEDWP doesn't ultimately purchase the plant. So you can expect that language to be in there, but ultimately that's what would happen.
So what is Panda giving Inland?
I don't know that, and quite frankly, I don't want to know. Inland is giving us a release from the contract, and that's what concerns me. I would imagine that the contract between Panda and Inland will be less lucrative than the contract that they have with the city, because I have been involved in some preliminary discussions several years ago now regarding renegotiation back the first time that we looked at flipping the development rights to this plant. So I know that Inland has been open to a renegotiation with the ultimate purchaser of the plant.
Who are the principals in Panda?
I don't know who their principals are. I could, tomorrow provide you with the names of the contacts that I've been dealing with.
Do you know if Buck Johns is one of the principals, or are they owned or affiliated with Panda?
No, I don't believe they are in any way.
Do you know what the timeline is for the decision process for LA Department of Water and Power?
It's a very complicated timeline. It could take as much as 18 months per the RFP. It could happen literally by November. It's kind of vague, and it's written sort of in an odd manner. The full RFP is actually in your agenda packet if anybody in the audience, or if you'd like to take a look at the timeline.
In the staff rec, it says that there's no cost to the city except for attorney's fees and what other fee?
Just staff time, my time,
Staff
basically.
Okay, is there any cap on the attorney's fees?
No, there's no cap. The attorney's fees would only be during this 30-day process as we do the definitive documents. After definitive documents are ultimately executed, then there would be no involvement by city staff or the city attorney.
Okay, so it's going to be our city attorney?
That's correct.
That's going to be doing it. Okay, do you know who introduced Panda to the city?
I know that Panda was one of the responders back in 2009 when we did sort of a modified RFP, but I don't know who originally introduced Panda to the city now.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned, and it also says in the staff rec, that Inland attended the meeting, or the bidders conference. Did any of our staff attend that bidders conference?
No, it was all the way in downtown LA, and after discussions with them, there wasn't a big reason for me to attend that. The timing wasn't good for me, for my calendar, and it was more of a technical conference. I don't know enough about these large power plants to have been really useful, I don't believe.
Well, that concerns me because, we've had nothing but bad luck with Inland Energy and their recommendations. So I was hoping that our staff was there to confirm what they came back with. So can you tell me when you had mentioned you talked about the associated permits with VB2, and can you tell me when those permits expire?
We've been working off a date of roughly 2016. There's a variety of permits. Each one of them has a different exact expiration date, but most of them have some opportunity for an extension. Reason I mentioned 2016 is that when we were in the negotiations with GE, when there was a dispute over the GE contract, the discussions that we had at that time were centered around the credit, the $10 million credit that GE gave us. We wanted that to expire at roughly the same time as the permits. GE wanted to give us a 2-year credit, but the power market at the time, we knew that there was no chance of building the power plant in that time. So we asked GE to extend that to 2016. But as far as each and every permit, no, I don't. I actually rely on Inland Energy to track those costs for us. They maintain, or both the costs and the dates. They maintain that for us as part of this at-risk work that they do.
Okay. And do you know what the percentage of the bond debt is for SCLA, and how much of that is VV2s?
SCLAA bond debt is how much, Keith? 330 or 300? About $330 million. This is $76 million of that. My math isn't quick enough, but that gives you at least a rough estimation of not the percentage, but the relationship there.
Okay, and then do you know the amount of the VMIS bond debt that's VV2s?
That's VV2s. There's none of that is VV2.
Okay. Do you know what the emissions credits are that we would be that would be going to LADWP?
It depends on how much they need, actually. In your agenda, under item 5C, it talks about obtaining the ERCs. That's something that is an obligation of PANDA upon selection as a preferred bidder. Presumably at that time, PANDA would then negotiate with LADWP to find out what emission reduction credits they need. The city does have some emission reduction credits for both PM10 as well as, I believe we have some BOC credits that we can make available. That would be an additional cost to LADWP or to PANDA, but ultimately the city would be paid for whatever emission reduction credits we provided for the project.
Oh, okay. So we would be getting that.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be giving it up for free.
No. There's no reason to do that. Those have a tremendous value depending on the amount of credits that they need. LADWP has a lot of facilities all over the state, actually, so they may already have emission reduction credits. I haven't read the RFP to the level of detail to know if they have an estimation as to how much they need. Part of that also depends on the makeup of the plant, and exactly what equipment goes in there will define how many credits that they need.
Okay, and then this would this question would go to the city attorney. Is it legal to encumber the taxpayers and then give the proceeds of that encumbrance or investment to a third party? Is that okay? Is that acceptable?
I'm not sure.
In other words, we have all this bond debt, and
Right.
we're supposed to pay it. I mean, can we transfer that?
The bond debt gets paid from the property tax increment generated from the project area. It's not an
Okay,
obligation.
and what about the investment that we put into this property?
But again, it's not an obligation of the city. That comes from the property tax increment, which has already been forecast, pledged, and as it is received, it pays off that bond debt. The Power Plant 2 project is a legitimate project to be paid for with tax increment funds.
Okay,
And
so
it has
you don't see any legal issue
No,
there?
and it's been put on our ROPS and our enforceable obligation requirements, and county auditor controller, and I believe the Department of Finance has authorized payment of proceeds to continue to pay that debt.
Okay, and then this question to Doug. Is this plant going to be a competitor for VV1?
Potentially, yes, it would. This plant would have the benefit of, as it's currently conceived, having Siemens technology, actually. That is a fast start. And also being so much newer than VV1 would actually have a lower heat rate, which means that the power output is more efficient for LADWP. In my discussions with both PANDA and with Inland Energy, actually, it's not clear if VV1 would bid into this project. The VV1 power plant is designed to run at 830 megawatts. It would be difficult and not cost effective in their estimation to run it at partial power. It just simply would not pencil. The folks that I've had to rely on to provide expertise believe that they likely will not bid into this project. We don't have any way to know if they will or not, ultimately. We'll have to wait and see what happens, at the end of August to find out, who the bidders are and how many there are.
Okay, and Buck Johns, who's the owner of Inland Energy, or a principal in Inland Energy, he has an interest in VV1, is that correct?
Yes, he has some level of interest in VV1.
Would that pose as a conflict there?
Not that I'm aware of.
And if VV1 is a successful plant, correct?
It's been a very successful plant, yes.
So by doing this other project, are we hurting ourselves by, I mean, we're getting tax increment from VV1, correct?
We do get tax increment from VV1, actually. It's based, as a power plant, it's not based solely on the actual value of the buildings and the land like a normal property tax. It's also based on their actual power output or estimated power output, but there is a floor on that that they are effectively at right now, that they can't pay anything less than, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but there is a certain floor that regardless of how much power output or regardless of how low that property value goes, they can't pay any less than a certain amount. That was all negotiated as part of their coming to the city.
Now, Buck Johns is a consultant for the city of Victorville in these energy projects, but yet he's a principal benefiting in the project. Is that a conflict of interest?
He's not a principal benefiting on VV2 that I'm aware of.
Well, doesn't he get 5% of the return of VV2?
We have no idea what the structure of that transaction is going to be. He's going to release the city and negotiate some sort of transaction with Panda.
But that's later on down the line. So what I'm asking is now he has a vested interest in VV2. Am I right? Yes?
He has if VV2 is ever developed and the city were to develop it, he has an interest in getting compensated.
But yet he's consulting for the city of Victorville. Now, wouldn't that be a conflict?
Because his consulting job was just to get to the stage of the permits.
Okay. And then lastly, could you explain to me how Buck Johns was able to get such a lucrative contract from the city for doing nothing? How he was able to get that 5%, which could equate to what, $5 million a year?
I've seen that number. I can't explain the negotiation that happened. I wasn't part of it. I do know that the thought behind that contract is that the city was interested in developing or causing the development of a second power plant, and that Buck Johns Inland Energy had the expertise in order to file for those permits. And Buck Johns offered his expertise in exchange for that 5% of the, I think it's the net profits, and ultimately the city decided to take that offer. And other than that, you'd have to talk with either Mr. Roberts, who I believe was involved in negotiating that contract, or potentially with some of your colleagues.
But that contract was ratified here on the council. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was ratified by the council. It was voted on in open session by the council back in, I think it was September of 2005.
Okay. So was there an RFP put out for Buck Johns to be the consultant?
I don't believe that there was, but I honestly don't know.
Okay, and then why was there such a short timeline for this? Why is it such an emergency? I feel like we're being so rushed that we don't have time to really, get all the facts.
LADWP didn't explain their 2-month timeline. We were unsure based on the RFP if Victorville 2 would even be eligible. That's why I asked Inland to go to that bidders conference. Ultimately, we have until August 30th, I believe it is, to allow Panda, or I suppose theoretically we could bid into it. I don't have anybody that has the expertise to do that, though. All bidders' documents are due by, I believe it's August 30th, to LADWP. So they set that timeline. We have to either meet it or not bid.
And I understand that there was a lot of criticism for the council for giving Buck Johns the consulting contract without going through the RFP process. Have we gone through an RFP process to use Panda?
No, we haven't. The timeline would never have allowed for anything like that. Panda was one of the bidders on an RFP process. It wasn't a full public RFP like you might normally see. It was essentially call for projects for interested parties. Back in the spring of 2009, when we were first attempting to sell the development rights, there was a lot of interest in the market from a lot of different companies, and they were all coming at the city with differing ideas. So we asked them effectively to each submit some kind of a proposal so that the council back then could consider their options all at one time, rather than wondering, well, this looks like a decent option, but we've got those other guys that may be submitting something in 2 or 3 weeks. So it was effectively saying, okay, all of you companies who are interested, you've got this much time to put a proposal together, and we'll consider them all at the same time. Panda was one of the bidders that we interviewed them. They were, I believe, third in that selection line. Ultimately, we negotiated with the first option, we negotiated with the second option, and were never able to come to any financial terms that were acceptable to both sides. I'm not saying this to try to make you believe that we're now over to the third option, because this is an entirely different situation, an entirely different deal. It just happened to be that this option was available, and Panda was also interested at the same time, and they had approached me directly to ask the status of the project. My initial meeting with them, just myself and them and one other staff member without Inland Energy there, it was clear that they were interested in using our development rights to bid into the LADWP project, and that they had the expertise to do it based on their recent success in Texas. So that's when I asked Inland Energy to also get involved, because ultimately, whether you like their agreement or not, their agreement is very firm, and it does require a transfer to the new owner. So for anyone who's ever proposed on this project to take over the development rights, one of the first things I've told them is, if you can't come to some long-term agreement with Inland that releases the city and transfers that contract in a manner that's acceptable to you as the final owner and to Inland, then there's really no point in talking. So that's how Panda came to be on your agenda tonight. Was originally they had contacted me, and it looked like an opportunity that we were both interested in.
Okay, well, just, I needed to ask all of these questions so that I could try to make the best decision I can. And I just feel that, history keeps repeating itself here in the city of Victorville. And we've made many poor financial decisions under the guise of deadlines, emergency, we got to do it now. For example, the purchase of the turbines for $50 million for VV2, on the advice of Buck Johns. And then, we hurried up and built that wastewater treatment plant. And, that hasn't worked out. And, the list could go on. And I think that, everything that we're doing here tonight, it almost sounds like history is repeating itself, and I can't be a part of it. I just feel that I can't be a part of history repeating itself. I think we can find better ways and take our time and do our due diligence. And a lot of the questions, because of the timeline, you weren't even able to get. So I'm not comfortable in supporting this at this time.
Just a couple of questions, Doug. Is this a contract? Are we entering into a contract here?
No, you're entering into effectively a term sheet that says we'll cooperate with Panda and work with them to develop the final contracts that would come back to this council within 30 days. You are also authorizing me to authorize Panda to submit a proposal in the interim time frame so that they can meet those schedules. But part of that proposal would be statements to the effect that the city owns the land, owns the permits, owns the development rights, and is willing to transfer those to Panda in the event that Panda is selected.
Now, over the years, I've been asked to submit. I've received requests for proposal. I've been asked to submit them. I've submitted a number of them. Some of them were given to me, some were not. And once a proposal was accepted, we still had a separate engagement letter and worked out the rest of the terms and the deals. My impression is that the questions we've listened to, which sounded so familiar to the ones that Mr. Mueller sent to you a couple of days ago that you've already responded to and that we've all been copied on. But the questions and the answers to me make it clear that this is exactly the right thing for us to do. Best opportunity we have on this project right now. So I got no problem supporting it.
All right. Actually, before we entertain a motion on this, I do have 3 cards. Sanford Kramer.
And city council and staff and everything like that. I'm kind of surprised as a taxpayer here that there hasn't been done, that staff hasn't done any really good research on Panda International, this company, and they don't even know the owner, the people who founded it or owned it, or when they started this business. And also their Moody rating right now, a C, downgraded. And they're $250 million. They have problems with a energy project they're dealing with as a consultant over in China with import fees and all that. I'm even surprised they're not even here if this is so important for everybody. And it might be a failed project, might not. It might be a dream come true. But for somebody that doesn't know too much about it, why aren't these people here so they can answer a lot of questions in regards to this? I mean, there's a lot of shady areas. That's what I see. Oh, by the way, I'm running for city council also. I'm on the ballot, so that's all I got to say right now.
Hakeem?
Mr. Mayor, do we have any idea of locations for this power plant, or is there any thoughts? What is that location, or is that?
It's out north of SCLA. It's already
300-acre site out there.
Yeah, it's already a designated site.
Oh, okay. And then my next question is, does the plant gets built, does the bills that the taxpayers and citizens pay, or those bills, are they expected to go up or down? Does anybody look at that? If the electricity that is provided, is it?
Well, the electricity, assuming LADWP would be the purchaser of the plant, would go into LA. It would not provide electricity here.
Okay. Yeah. And then last question is, from start to finish, how long will the project take? So let's say in a perfect world, everything's get granted and they go, will it take about 3, 4, or how many years would it take to build the plant? I'm curious.
It could probably be constructed in about 2 years, would be my best guess.
And would local people be able to be put to work with that, or?
Certainly that's an opportunity that local people would have. It's not part of what's under consideration right now, and ultimately that would be part of LADWP's, or actually Panda's, decision-making. They would be the owner of the plant during construction, but I know that they would have no reason not to hire local people. That's something to be negotiated later. As we move along.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Frank Atkins.
Well, he's coming up. There's one other little component that makes this a viable spot too. Is we have an interconnect to the system grid right out here at SCLA as well that is primed for that power plant. If you build it someplace remote, there's a lot of transmission lines that have to come into a point. So this is another plus for our power plant site.
Hello again, Council. I noticed you use the term, like, Doug, you use the term offload, like got something to dump, Just curious, this property and this whole thing, how much, like, if I have a car and I want to sell it, I know the price of the car, what I paid for it, and that type of stuff. How much has the city spent or invested, and how much is the value of this? And with all the investments, the equipment, whatever else is there, the land, and how much have we spent? How much is it worth? Do you have a total like that? And then, how much are we going to end up losing on this whole deal? Even though it's in the paper and things, it's saying we're going to get $25 million. I mean, we're talking big figures. I just don't understand. And Angela brought up a good point that this is one of these things that is being rushed. Everything's rush, rush, rush. and there's still a lot of facts and information we don't have. You guys don't seem to have. I mean, I got a prediction the way it's going to go. Jim will probably move, and Rothschild will second, and Ryan will third, and Angelo will be no. That's the way things seem to go. Business as usual. That's got to stop. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, I can answer the questions. I'm not sure if it was questions or comments, but
Well, they sounded more like comments to me from someone that's running for city council, but I would encourage you to engage Mr. Atkins and provide him with all that information. I mean, it's been discussed in length here tonight, as well as been reported on widely in the paper over the last 3 years. So he already reported it, $76 million. That's what we've invested into this project. I can't give you a price on what the property's worth. We don't have an appraisal. Okay? That's what we've spent on it. We're looking to recoup some of that money.
Mr. Mayor, just to give a little bit of detail on that, of the $76 million, approximately $10 million of that is in the land and legal costs to purchase the land. The remaining $16 million is in a variety of development costs, mostly obtaining the permits that are needed, as well as paying consultants for that work. There also would be some legal fees included in that. The $50 million that I referenced earlier was a down payment on the original contract with General Electric. It was a $183 million contract that ultimately the city was unable to make any additional payments on. And I, along with the city attorney's office, negotiated out of that contract in exchange for a $10 million credit. At the time, GE was looking to recover either the $132 or so, $133 million of additional dollars that was part of the contract, or a severance, which I believe was an additional $56 million. And so that potential severance based on the date of the contract termination was actually eliminated. So we saved paying the $56 million that would have been paid under that contract termination. In exchange, we did have to give up the $50 million deposit, but we were able to at least get a $10 million credit should the plant be built with GE equipment. I can tell you right now that at this time it does not appear that GE equipment will be used for the plant because the Siemens equipment that's under consideration is more responsive to the needs of LADWP.
All right, and before I entertain a motion, just some comments for myself. I've been involved in this since day one when I came onto the council back in 2008. I have been vocally critical of the Inland Services Agreement, not in favor of it, and have looked for ways, along with staff, to figure out how we get out of it. We have been close twice to getting a release from Inland. And unfortunately, the companies that we were negotiating with backed out of those deals. Now we're here today, and we actually have something that would actually provide a release of the Inland Services contract before this council and provide us with a release from Inland on a go-forward basis where they would not have any involvement in the city any longer. So any vote against this deal would be a vote for Inland, not against them. So I think it's kind of interesting that I would, if I were Angela, I'd be jumping over the dais to vote for this, and I'm out in front of it as well, because from my perspective, this is our opportunity and the only opportunity that exists today, and we don't see any other one on the horizon for some time, where we would get that release from Inland, and the city would no longer be obligated to them. So, you know, what their deal is with Panda is not germane to our discussion. What's most important is that the city get released from Inland, the city be made whole, and the city see that power plant built. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion with respect to this item.
I'd like to address Mr. Kennedy's comment about this not being a contract. I'd like to remind him how the Macy's deal turned out with the direction. They held us hostage and said they'd pull out if we didn't do it, and they already started construction. And then as far as Mayor McCachran, it's not a vote for Inland in no way. I mean, I don't feel that we have enough information and we're being rushed, and I can't make a sound decision. And the fact that Panda is going to make who knows how many millions of dollars, and we didn't go out for an RFP, and we don't know who the principals are, it could be a vote for Buck Johns. We just don't know.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Cabrales absent and Councilmember Valles voting no.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 19, council committee reports. Mr. Rothschild?
I have none.
None. Ms. Valles?
None.
I have none. Agenda item number 20, discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming city council agenda.
I would like to see if we could add to Captain Yoder's reports the vicinity of where the crimes are occurring mostly.
I'm fine. With respect to the question that was brought up earlier by one of our public comments,
Please?
yeah, police reports where they would include where the crimes were located.
I concur with that. I was
Yeah.
going to make that request. If she
Okay.
didn't.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's it?
All right, I have nothing. Reports from staff and council members?
No comments from staff.
Let me, me being the only one that was on the council when we went into the $52 million deposit for the GE contract, I'll try to give you a little thumbnail of the background of that. First of all, it was a 5-0 vote, and Goldman Sachs was handling our account. Now, 2020 is great, you know, looking over your shoulder. We went into that at the front end of the economic downturn that happened over a 3-month period that, I mean, from about April or so, within that amount of time, the economy went not only in this state, but the entire country, and in fact, to hit the world economy. That has never been heard of before. That the folks that are talking about that is incredible. We went into the contract at the front end of that process. We had a year. Goldman Sachs had 7 companies lined up. I believe Inland was one of the 7. But they had them all there, and they were putting their bids up for that, those generators. Those generators were so valuable, supposedly, at that time, with everybody wanting them, that we would be at the end of a 2-year waiting period. Each month of that period was worth about $500,000 to the city. If I could take one vote back, that would be the one I'd love to take back. I really would. I can't. So where we are today is where we are. We've got $25 million in asset that we'll probably recover if this deal goes through and finishes. We've got, I think Mr. Cox has got $6 or $8 million worth of equipment sold off on parts of that was out there. The rest of it is a loss to us. The flip side of that is that the plant is a $1 billion plant, and over a period of time, the property tax increment will flow back in. You'll never get the $50 million back. It's gone. It was a decision we made at that moment in time. It seemed to be a good idea. Everybody, including the best experts in the world, Goldman Sachs was rated one of the finest banks in the country to handle a deal like this, and they had the deal locked up. It wasn't Buck Johns or anybody else. They were the ones giving us the advice. So having said that, all I'm going to say is it was a 5-0 vote. At the moment we agreed with it. Coming out of the other end of that year, we really regretted that vote. There's nothing we could do about it, so we've been working ever since to try to get that rectified as best we can. I think this deal today is as good as it's going to get coming out. We did have the lawsuits on the Carter Burgess deal that's still in the bank here that we won over a $54 million class action suit on some activity that was a spill off of this. That's not directly collected with VB2, but it is part of our energy policy. That policy, by the way, doing it our way, not the way that Goldman Sachs, or not Goldman, excuse me, Carter Burgess is doing it. We're now making about $3 million a year in profit from our Venus electrical energy. That's another source of revenue, by the way, to the city that the state of California cannot reach in and take. Those are the kind of things that we need to do going forward to survive in this state. Unfortunately, the state is not city friendly. They're looking for taking revenues everywhere they can. We're sitting here right now, if we either have 475,000 in reserve or we have 75,000 in reserve. The difference is that the state of California is taking 400,000 of our vehicle tax money, and we're in a lawsuit with that. If we win it, we have 475,000 reserves going forward for this year. If we lose it, we have 75,000, and all the other cities have to deal with the same type of activity. So that's the thumbnail of what we went through 8 years ago. It was a good decision at the time, and I wish we hadn't done that one, but we did. And so here I am today. I'm going to run for city council, and I'm going to explain on the campaign trail that hopefully people recognize that there is a lot to do. The successor agency and the experience that this city council needs going forward in this state is important. I don't care about the snottiness of this gentleman up here in the front. I've never criticized him as he come up to the microphone, but those kind of actions are not being proper in this council chamber or anyplace else. But I am proud of my activities on this council. I'm proud of what I've done on here, and I'll be out there asking for your support coming in up to November. Thank you very much.
I think the first meeting I attended on the city council, somebody started threatening to vote me out of office. So I've developed a pretty thick skin on those kind of threats. I got elected. If I don't get elected again, it isn't going to change my life particularly. But I will do the right thing. I will do the right thing as I see the right, put your hand down, as I see the right thing in my mind. Here's what I'd like to say about this campaign, and I'll make allowances for the people on the outside looking in and running, because they're running against something. Whatever's here, they're running against it. The folks on this council who are running know the facts. They know the truth. The facts and the truth are available to anybody who wants to find them. But if you're determined to distort and twist the facts, shame on you, and especially if you're a member of this council knowingly twisting facts. Shame on you. We owe the citizens of this community the truth, and that's what we need to tell them. And I hope this election brings that out, and I hope the citizens of this city make the right decisions, and we'll find out.
All right. The only thing that I have is I received a letter from Supervisor Metzelfelt, I believe on Thursday. I'm having Mr. Metzler forward that all to you via email. It basically addresses or attempts to address, and I'm not even sure if it does that, it just brings up the fact that the grand jury report suggests that VITA ought to look at taking back over SCLA. He is requesting that the councils discuss this item. I would ask that each and every one of you, including Mr. Cabrialis, who's absent tonight, to send your comments and suggestions to me. It is going to be agendized at our next VITA board meeting, which I believe is September 20th or 21st. For discussion, and then probably ultimately would come back to this council. So anyway, that letter will be distributed to each and every one of you, and I would encourage you to share your comments with me with respect to that. The staff is developing a response to the grand jury report, which will come before the council, I believe,
September 4th.
September 4th, and then ultimately, once we've had an opportunity to have that discussion, will be made public and go to the grand jury.
As far as being made public, it'll actually be on your agenda. So next Thursday afternoon, you can expect to get a copy of it. It'll be available on the website. Obviously, at that point, it'll be draft until the council has had a chance to review it in full and ultimately approve, adopt. I'm not sure the exact language. Unfortunately, the consultant for the grand jury listed me as the city manager as the responding agency, whereas the law actually says it's the governing body for the agency. So you will be responding as both the city council and as the SCLAA board, and then ultimately VITA has one item. It's the very last item in the report that they're supposed to respond to. Mr. Metzler and I are working on, actually mostly Mr. Metzler, on that last item regarding the VITA item, and we will include that most likely as part of the city's response, just as an information item, but the city isn't the actual responder for the very last item.
All right. So anyway, I just wanted to let you all know that you should have that letter within your inbox as you leave here. So with that, we are adjourned.